Welcome back to the Forex Fortress and another Friday preparation video, of which the sort of narrative for videos like this on a Friday is obviously going to be preparation for the next week to come, as most of the week's activity has already happened today. So with that said, I want to wish you the best of best, and let's waste no more time, get into it. Start off with good old Dixie, of which Dixie hitting our long-term target down to the 89 3/4 mark, which is going to be notified by this nice little horizontal coming in right around here, of which we have actually quite literally got pretty much to the T there, actually 89.73. Not bad. And now, are we seeing any sort of short-term bottoming action on the short-term timeframes? Perhaps yes. At least I'd give it a chance here, as I do believe that if this is going to mark off at the very least a little bit of a short-term or medium-term bounce, it's likely to kind of trade sideways here for a few days, I'd imagine, maybe even a week or two, and then try a bouncy bounce from that territory. Now, of course, the same areas that were relevant on the way down will be relevant on the way up, and that is going to be this area right here, right around 90.25 on the way up. So as long as we are below that region, I would say that this is no more or no less than just a medium-term move. If Dixie can actually close back above there, I'd imagine this probably isn't happening like this week, probably maybe potential next week or the week after that. Then yes, I would start to look at this as potentially a greater bouncy bounce, maybe even reversal point as well. But as it stands right now, as always, have to prepare for the weekly, and the weekly is well pretty fucking abysmal right here, as we do see a weekly death cross plus breaking the structure from about 4 or 5 weeks ago. That all set into motion the biases for much lower price targets, of which those have been fulfilled for now. So I would be a little bit hesitant here, but yes, this is the first time that I do think that we might have a little bit of sideways on a medium-term time frame, and probably play out a bit of a bounce here over the next few days. So with that said, let's go to good old Aussie dollar. And if you recall from the last few days, or I mean like the last week and a half, there's just been basically a bullish bias on all major pairs trading against US dollar. So Aussie dollar no different with that. Let's look at the 4 hour right here. 4 hour actually looks like wants to take another leg back up to the prior high on this run, right around 76.35 region. We did hit our target from yesterday, I do believe. Yes, indeed. Or sorry, no. That was the day prior, coming out of this ascending triangle base. Nice one. But I'll be looking for this one to give another try to the upside, actually, as it does look quite nice on even the low term time frames. Daily, what are we looking at right here? Daily looks like continuation to me as well, and of course weekly is going to very likely have a bullish bias coming into this week if this condition is met. If you see a weekly closure above 75, easy to remember, then I would be looking for the next leg to be taken up over the next few weeks up to about 77.5, we'll call it, at this next relevant area right here, coming in from our March 2018 major breakdown on that structure. Anyways, moving on to Cad Dollar. What do we have here? 78.39 or 78.38. This one looks like it's getting a little bit front run off the 377 actually on the weekly, so I would be a little bit more defensive here. 4 hour looks a lot more toppy-ish, at least short term and medium term, as we do play out 1, 2, 3, 4 drives of bearish divergence on this run. So yes, I do believe that this one does trade a little bit sideways here, and then ultimately will come back down toward about 77.95, and I do believe that the weekly is a front run of that target. Daily is still okay, but short term downside. So I'd be looking for next week to likely trade back down just below 78 cents, and then we'll come back to it after that. Moving on to Swiss franc dollar over here, we got 113. This one looks more or less like continuation on the whole, but let's go down to the very short-term time frames right here. A little bit of a short-term rejection, as you can see, playing out also a 4 hour jewel sell signal right here too, and that likely does bring this one back down to short-term support on structure. That's going to be 112.35 cents, or I guess it's 112.35 just. And looking at the weekly, preparing for next week, I would be looking for a short-term pullback coming into next week, and likely that gets picked back on up, and we still look north towards the 114 target. Currently, how high did we get this week? 113.31. Yeah, pretty damn close there, but still not exactly where I'm looking for. Ultimately, I would be just bullish on this one in general, so short-term, if it pulls back into next week, I'd be looking at that as an opportunity more or less, and long-term, I'm looking for 114 and probably beyond after that as well. I mean, this is very constructive price action over the last 6 years, going back to September 2014. I like that. It looks like accumulation essentially. Anyways, moving on to euro dollar. What do we have right here? 122.5. Still stick with my long-term targets coming into next week at 123.5 for the first sort of potential little bit of a sell-off. Ultimately, though, I do think that it will reach towards about 124.5. And let's see what the very short-term timeframes look like right here. Short-term timeframes could be a little bit of a pullback, maybe back down to 122.1 region, but I don't feel too strong about that. In fact, like I said, to start off this video, the focus right now is not on the short-term timeframes, although, could we see a little bit here? I mean, even looking at momentum oscillators, I'm not really inclined to be looking for like an actual pullback, maybe just like a very short-term thing. Daily looks good. Yeah, daily still good here. No. Daily and weekly tell the story. Fuck the 4 hour. Fuck the 4 hour. The daily, the weekly show more upside. 123.5 next week, quite likely. Moving on to pound yen. What do we have right here? This one's the very interesting one. So I've been holding off on making any sort of long-term call on this one for the last like few days. Weekly and daily are still a bit in limbo here, but I do read this as the daily selling off that same sort of, and actually the weekly as well, selling off the same sort of diagonal resistance that is marking off the declining highs on what would be a descending triangle, which would be incredibly bearish at this level right here too. Looking at volume signature as well, it would follow through that. Yes, this probably is going to be in the next major rejection, and we do head back down in this region. But checking out the 4 hour, yep, 4 hour downside as well. So finally, we have something that's showing a little bit of downside on basically all time frames. So I do stick with that, and there we go, we got some red dills finally, motherfucker. Now let's move on over to pound dollar. Same sort of thing. Short term looks like it wants to play back down towards 134 1/3. What about a daily over here? Daily's not that problematic though. I would be looking for a short-term down, 134 or 133.5, I think it was. Anywhere around there. But I actually I'd be looking for a bounce at that level as well. Looking at a weekly, this one looks more or less fine on the whole, and I do think that it will it will mount another rally attempt, probably somewhere around the 377 on the weekly, around 137.5 to 138 region, and then I'd be looking for another high right there. Long term though, still declining highs as long as long as it's below that region. So make no mistake about it. Long term, I'd still probably err on the side of the bear odds here, but short term, medium term likely does have a little more upside to go, and then we'll come back to it after that. Moving on to yen dollar. What do we have right here? Flirting around with that crazy level. I want to see a weekly closure above 90. What exactly is this? I just want to see it above this high right here, 96.73. If that condition is met, which right now it technically is trading above that level, I would still keep my bullish bias on this. In fact, I'd be keeping a bullish bias on this, unless if we have like a very abysmal close, let's say below like 96.39 or 96.40ish region today. At the end of the day, for all intents and purposes, momentum oscillators here look very, 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 very good. Weekly RSI is very constructive. This one's very likely to not just overtake this level, but gun towards the next long-term target about 98, 92 region, and maybe even beyond there over time. Moving on to Nasdaq Futures, we said new all-time highs on this one, and we got some new all-time highs. Looking good. The market that never goes down. Even the 4 hour can't be fucking stopped. Higher lows, higher highs all along the way. Bullish on all time frames. As the historic volatility percentile gets extremely low right here as well, I think we're going to be looking at a new melt up phase. Still looking at the long-term target of the pattern extension right here, or the measure move off this pattern right here, and also the Fibonacci extension right around 13,000 and 150. So fair enough, looking good right there. I imagine SPY is more or less the same, but Nasdaq right now is leading the rotations in this world market, so I would be looking at that as more or less just likely to carry on over to pretty much everything. Moving on to gold. Gold looking really, really good here. Did take out last week's high. That was setting in the buys for declaring this as a local low, which means that now we can front run this signal as hidden bullish divergence, plus weekly Stokes turning back up here as well. I'd say that short term it will have a target of around 1950, and then more medium to long term it will have a target back up towards back past actually 2000 towards like 2040 or 2050ish region, and probably beyond. I mean, again, everything in the world right now is fucking rallying, so if it wants to rally, it can rally. It's just you want to see it rally sooner rather than later. That does go in, or does imply its degree of strength essentially. Anyways, moving on to Bitcoin. Do we have anything new to talk about here as well? I don't really think I do. I really don't think that I do here. Still playing off the same short-term range, 22,650 and 23,500. Pretty much $1,000 range for fucking short terms. How ridiculous is that? I know it's absolutely ridiculous, but yes, this is starting to look like, or it's looking like it's more or less constructive over here. With the weekend coming up, I would be a bit defensive, especially with this being a very powerful uptrend. A lot of the time during the weekends, you will see counter trend moves that are designed to kind of just wash out the over leveraged players in this market. It's a lot easier to do those sort of washout moves over the weekend when fewer people are trading. However, what I would say though, and the big thing that I really be wanting to talk about today, we can go over the short term time frames here. Let's say say, let's say the short-term time frame support does break to the downside. That'd be 22,650. If that does happen, I'd look for any sort of a run back down towards the 4-hour 21, currently at about 21,650. Do I think that's what's happening here? No, not necessarily, but during the weekend time, I wouldn't be surprised if we get like a wick down there and still close above this region. By the same token, to the upside, resolution would be had above 23,000 and 23,350, we'll call it 350, and that would be get a short-term continuation target towards about 24,000 bucks at the 2.414 right here. But I don't believe that that's where things would actually stop. That's very unlikely. In fact, the next real algo target is going to be the 2618 actually, which is going to be 24,500-ish region. Now, this next thing that I'm going to speak about is going to supersede everything else, and this is probably more relevant to a lot of people out there who are thinking more long-term on an asset like this, and it's the weekly Challenger bands. And seeing as CME is going to have a chance to close above the topside Challenger band today, as it does actually close today, and then obviously spot price action will follow through on Sunday, and usually does get led by CME. If we do see a closure above the topside Challenger band here, which is currently about 21,000 bucks, and Bitcoin's clean, more clean, almost 2,000 bucks above that right now. Quite impressive indeed. Then I would be looking for new all-time highs coming into next week. As long as this condition is met, I'm essentially looking at this as a trend in progress. Looking at the daily right here, same shit. Looking at the 12-hour right here. Technically speaking, same shit as well. Actually did close above once again, but the 12-hour does look a little bit potentially sideways-ish. But if we were to do the same thing on spot price action, I think it looks a lot more like an obvious consolidation. I think that's further verified when we go into the low-term timeframes over here. Volume signature would support that, and I would essentially look at this as some sort of a reaccumulation likely going on, especially as long as we hold above that critical level at 22,650. As long as that condition is met, ultimately I do think that this will gun for our next target, 24,500 to 25,000. Did I say that right? 24,500 to 25,000, somewhere in between there. Yeah, and then I'd be looking for maybe another short-term consolidation, and we'll judge it after that. But the big thing is does the weekly close above the topside Toronto band on CME today? If that happens, new highs coming into next week, extremely likely. Do I think that's just likely in general? Yeah, I do. So fair enough. I want to wish you the best once again. Take care, and until next time.